nerd, so I'm sorry. But because we're recording, I have my hair in my mouth. Okay, Casey, I'm going to have Casey lead us in a word of prayer real quick. We talked about this. We discussed this.
One word of prayer?
Shut up.
That's not the word, dear.
Go.
All right, let's pray. Lord, thank you for tonight. It's a hot August evening in East Texas. And we just thank you to be together as a body of believers. Everyone in this room has a heart for children and has a heart for raising children in the way that you meant. We see all the fiery darts, and we want to be used to protect and build up our children that they can follow you and that they can become the next generation of warriors on watch. So guide us, lead us, direct us. Thank you for putting this on Christy's heart for so long. Thank you for the hours of research she put in. Thank you for everyone here who could be anywhere else, but they decide to come here. So just guide us, Lord. Let us start a movement where we take back our families for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
So I'm Christy. I really don't like using mics, so I just want to kind of say that. Casey's going to run my stuff for me, but he's not up there, so just waiting for him to get up there. So since some of you kind of don't know me other than Casey's wife, I sort of made a few slides just to kind of give you some little information, a little more about me. Honey, love, dear.
I'm here. Hold on, sorry, just a second.
There we go. So my family and my fur family, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you've seen a couple of my fur family photos. So that's our family. I do love animals. So yeah, that's that one. Next, I'm docking your salary because you're not paying attention. So I was born and raised in San Antonio. I'm a city girl. My first job, oddly enough, was in Midland, Texas. I actually went to student teach in Midland, Texas, and the first day on my student teaching job, I was offered a job. They had a teacher walk out at the end of December, and they said, "Hey, we need a teacher. You're here." And I said, "Okay." So it was baptism by fire, literally. So I've been teaching orchestra for a little over 20 years. And in this area, I've noticed when I say that, people don't really know what that means. So I put a little blurb of what my job used to be so that you can actually see it. We're not watching the whole thing, by the way. So that was me, many pounds lighter and a little thinner, straighter hair. And now, since we've moved here, there's no orchestra. The closest orchestra program is in Tyler. I'm now a behavior teacher, so now I just get, punched and kicked and chase after kids. So that's kind of where my history has come from. But with all of that in this area of me moving forward, it's always been when I sit with parents or I talk with parents and I talk with kids, it's like there's a gap between what's happening in the schools, what we see in the school, what we see in the church, and what we see in here at home. And for some reason, we never can seem to build that bridge. And when you talk to different people, if you talk to somebody in a church, they say, "Oh, the kids are great, they're doing wonderful, they're these great little angels." And you go, same one I saw in the hallway today, the one I saw in the cafeteria. So it's just been kind of this years of going through this and trying to figure out, why are we not getting this? Why are we not making this connection? And so that led me to sort of where we are today, which is, wow. So over the past 3 years, it's been really weighing heavily on me, on my heart, to figure out a way to connect parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, with kids, and how do we get these families back? And so it's been kind of a long process. I kind of went through a couple of years of trying to talk to churches, trying to figure out how can we get a parent program started. And every time I was met with kind of like how they saw it happening, which was more, we're going to tap dance around this topic. And we're going to kind of talk about it, but we're not going to get nitty gritty with it. Well, the truth is, Satan's not dancing around the topic. He's putting on those boxing gloves and he's coming out swinging because he's seeing the clock ticking. And so the past year in particular, I was having trouble sleeping. I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was just like, man, this is just so heavy. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know where you want me to go with this. And when I thought I sort of had an opening, like maybe this will happen, it kind of got met with the same kind of resistance. Like, well, how about we do this? And we just do it for a couple of weeks. And in my head, I was like, that's not what we need. We need an ongoing process that helps people get going, and then we help keep them there, and we help maintain. And we have so many more now, grandparents that are raising their kids, aunts and uncles that are having to take care of their kids, or they're becoming more caregivers than they were before in previous generations. And so I was literally woke up in the middle of the night about 3 a.m, and it was clear as a bell. God spoke to me and said, stop going through the church. And I went out into the living room and I went, what? Like, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. But it wasn't like stop using the church. It was stop trying to go through the church. Because I'll be honest, in general, we have become our own worst enemy as Christians. We are not preaching necessarily what we should be. And I'm not talking about Crossroads. Okay, put this aside. I don't belong to Crossroads. This is something different. But in general, we've gone to feel-good preaching. I remember being a kid, I've joked with people about this, I must have gotten saved like 3 or 4 times as a kid because people would preach and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to make sure I don't go there. And you felt that. But it was an honest fear, not a scary fear, but a genuine fear of, I don't want to go to hell. Hell, I don't want to be there. We don't do that anymore. And so it's this feel-good thing. And so now we're watching kids. I see kids come into my classroom who will be like, no, those are just great stories. You're like, what? How did we make this pivot? So how did we swing so far? And part of it is because as parents, we lost control. We lost that authority over our kids. So through all of this came about, this started coming up, and I just put it in God's hands, and it just sort of spiraled into this. So I don't know what this is going to do. I have no idea what this is going to look like in a year from now. I would love for it to take off and other communities kind of partner together, and we do it together in other communities and going through these topics. But like I've said before, this is a marathon, not a sprint. This isn't, I'm going to dump all of this on you at one time, because it's a lot and it's ever changing. Because it always seems like we're, one step behind what's happening and what's coming up. But if you're anything like me, you see it. I told Casey the other day, I'd really be surprised if we're here in the next 10 years. I really feel like, man, it's coming. The earth is groaning, and it's just like, he's coming. And so we don't have time to waste. We don't have games. We can't play games anymore, and we can't be silent about it. And so that leads me to where we are now. So with that being said, that's what this ministry aims to do, is just let's tackle these subjects. Let's have these conversations. Let's talk. Let's not just tiptoe around it. And I've said this before, and this is going to sound pretty crass, but this is where we are. If at 4th grade, kids can be caught giving blowjobs in a classroom, then it's time that we start talking about these conversations. We cannot tiptoe around this. And we can sit there and we can blame the teacher. What was the teacher doing? How did she not? These kids are good. These kids are good. They are sneaky. Kids know way more verbiage than I ever knew at that age. And so we kind of still have this mindset that, well, I didn't know that till I was like in college or I was married. Oh, not so. And even the best of families that have that wonderful, solid foundation, they're beautiful little children, I guarantee they're hearing it at school, even if it's just a passing conversation or a passing comment. So we have to be more proactive, and we can't think that it's not happening and they're not hearing the conversation. And so we've got to get out of those words that make us feel uncomfortable or those conversations that make us uncomfortable, because Lord knows we don't like talking about it. I don't like talking about it to my kids, but we have to. We have to start having those conversations because our kids are getting lost in the shuffle, and then they're embarrassed to come to tell us what's happening or what they've heard. So with all of that, that's to say we're letting the world, that's not me, we've been kind of on this path of letting the world teach our kids instead of us teach our kids. Social media is teaching our kids, cartoons, all that stuff is teaching our kids. We are not teaching our kids. And I had this really big thought that somebody had made a comment about coaches. Now I'm orchestra. So in fine arts and athletics, we spend the most time with your kids, because we see them for before school, after school, overnight trips. We have a lot of time with them. But ultimately, we should not be their guiding force. But it's turned into, oh, the coach will get them in line. Well, that's not the coach's job. And it's turned into that. So we've got to start getting this back. And because we've lost this control, we've got broken children, broken homes, broken families altogether. So this is trying to give us some tools, and all of us start working together to help put this back together. So if we start moving in this direction, and we have to ultimately remember God's plan for our family, his number one design. Honey, change slides. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Why are you going backwards? Thank you. All right, so God's family design, we all know this, but just in case we've forgotten, God's first, Jesus, Son of God, dad, mother, children. The mother section, there, I don't think anybody here is like this, but just in case you're talking to people, that independent woman thing, that's me. That gets very confused with, that means you're not going to submit. That's not true. That's not true. But it gets talked about as, well, you're way over here, and you don't bow down to men. Well, no, I don't bow down to men. But my husband is the spiritual head of my household. And I will put him there. That's where he belongs. And that's where the disconnect has happened. If we really look back, that's part of the disconnect, as we started taking out men not being head of the household because women went totally the other direction. And then we started breaking down from there. And so now it's almost like children are on top and parents are at the bottom. And then God is, somewhere sprinkled in there. So we want to keep this idea in mind as we move forward, so that we're remembering this and sharing this with others when we talk, even when it's heated conversations. So I'm a visual person. So the way we're going to start this is we're going to kind of talk about building a house. But in order to do that, we've got to know our generations. And I've had this conversation before, is why does this matter? Because when I'm talking to a generation, somebody that's not in my age bracket, it's really easy to be judgmental. But if I don't know their history or what they went through or what was happening, it's hard for me to make the connection. So I went back and I looked up some facts about the generation, just major things. So the greatest generation, and we have very few in this generation left. I mean, we're pretty much almost out of this one. World War II, jazz and swing music, that was for my benefit more than anything else. The stock market crash, golden age of Hollywood, parenting styles, raised children to value hard work, realistic and pragmatic way of living, greatly influenced their parenting style. Miscellaneous, they had skills to survive and prosper, and that was greatly emphasized to their children. So remember, that led into the next generation, right? They had those skills, they had to live off of that. They were very work heavy, get in, dig in, do your work. So that led into our silent generation. They got to see the fall of the Nazis. They saw the Cold War, and they experienced the rise of the nuclear bombs. Also, their parenting style was they were very quiet. They never wanted attention called to themselves as a parent. So they weren't laid back, but it was just, we're not going to yell, we're not going to scream, we're just kind of on this side of it, but they were still kind of authoritative in their parenting styles. They were also known for becoming parents at the youngest age. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't know that. But they are also the generation that popularized divorce. So that's when we start seeing a rise in divorce cases, is around that generation. So they were known for working within the system rather than fighting the system. So they weren't kind of our system changers. They worked in it. They didn't really fight against it. So our next generation after that was everybody's favorite, the boomers. This is one we hear about a lot, right? So our boomer generation, very high standards of living, higher educational standards. That's kind of when we started getting more about the colleges and degrees. They saw the Vietnam War, and they were also part of the civil rights movement. They raised their children with a focus on wanting the best for them and making sure their kids went to college. That's the first generation that was very much college-driven. Not a bad thing, but just so you kind of know where that falls in the category. They had the skills to survive and prosper, and that was greatly emphasized to their children. So we kind of got that passed down on, we got to know how to take care of ourselves. Canning, that's why boomers are really good with, I know how to can vegetables and I know how to do this, because that was sort of a passed down thing. Generation X, yes, best generation out there. We came up during the AIDS epidemic. MTV culture, rise of video games and personal computers, the rise of girls' sports, rise of the internet and dot-com bubble. Our parenting style, meaning we as parents, focus on learning about parenting and caring about work-life balance. We were also known as helicopter parents. This is kind of when these terms first start coming up at identifying parenting styles, helicopter parents. And if you're not familiar with helicopter parents, it just means that they hovered over their children in regard to their education. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it kind of freaked out teachers in the education system because they were very involved up at the school. They were the volunteers. They were in there. They were doing stuff. And that sort of freaked out other people. And they were more involved with children's social and educational development. We were the generation of volunteers and very involved in their kids' development. So within the school system, within the church, it's that Gen X group that you see. So right in there. Boomers are still there, but if you keep in mind, boomers are sort of heading out of that. We're tired. We volunteered all this time. We're done. And so it's that Gen X that's sort of coming up into that. So when we move out of that, we move into, I would say, probably the ones we're most concerned about. Millennials. They are the childhood that had the internet from start to finish. They are known for the regular presence of cell phones. They don't know anything without it. They were the rise of social media, and of course they endured COVID-19, which is very important. Their parenting style, across the education system, they are the lawnmower parents. Means they push everything out of the way for their kids. They are those parents that come in and it's not the kid's fault, it's your fault. Why did my kid fail their test? What did you do wrong? Not what did my kid do wrong? It's the parent that calls the job for the child and says, why did my child not get this job? These are true stories, like real things. Or why did my child not get into your college? Those are lawnmower parents, and they want no obstacles for their kids. They were also the generation or this millennial generation, they keep their kids busy. This is that over-scheduling kids so that they're super, super busy. That also kind of falls back into the whole, if they're busy, then they won't get into trouble. So we swung sort of the other direction. They reflect the desire for their children to feel special, trophy for every kid. That's that generation. Are conscious about child's environment, especially food safety. Therefore, oh look, no peanut butter. And I'll tell you, we laugh about the peanut butter thing, but that was a big deal in the schools because that's considered a protein in the schools. And so for some kids, that was what they ate. That was their meal. That was their protein. And when a kid comes to school and they can't afford to pay for lunch, they're usually given a what? A sandwich. They can't have that anymore. So that has kind of triggered everything to now we're super overboard with that. And I do believe that allergies are real. Don't get me wrong. Kids are allergic to things. We could go on a tangent about why that is, but that's kind of where all of that came from. Technology, the internet, and social media are all major influences in the lives of parents. They're open-minded generation. They're naturally freer parents in their approach, which means they don't really go because you said so. It's because let's try this. Let's try something new. Let's see how this works. But however, they're the most anxious generation in history. It's crazy how this anxiety, tagging in technology, we all of a sudden have anxiousness. But they are also a generation feeling more that you don't have to be married to have kids. So you're seeing a lot of that. I don't need to be married. If I want a kid, I don't have to be married. Again, we're losing that structure, and we can do it on our own. We don't need this. Then after millennials, we have Gen Z. Of course, the ever-present internet, never knew life without a cell phone or digital media. COVID-19, young people as activists. So these are kind of our high school, late middle school kids. Very prone to anxiety, known to set boundaries, more pragmatic and analytical about their decisions, short attention spans, 2.7 minutes. No joke, 2.7 minutes. That's why if you're watching TikTok, videos are not longer than 3 minutes because they don't have the time to watch it. They don't have the span. They're very much we-minded, carries over into the family life and dynamics, informing their dreams and even hobbies. It's all about them. We. Typical behavior, very money-driven and ambitious, was not necessarily a bad thing. It's coming back to we are driven, but it's about the mighty dollar. I want to be an influencer. I want to be a YouTuber. It's about how much money can I make. They are the most depressed generation right now, and they have more mental health issues, which we're seeing a lot of in the education system right now. Gen Alpha are the kids that are like 13 and below. So the only information so far that we have on this generation is that they were entirely born in the 21st century, which is pretty cool. They were born the same year as the iPad. Those are currently middle school kids for most of them. Expect their individual needs and preferences to be taken into account. That's an important piece. They want you to listen to them. It's not your decision. It's, well, what about me? I want it this way. So be careful. That's Gen Alpha. Current predictions are permanently connected, meaning attention to new techniques, independent at making their own decisions, and managing digital identities. And they are. If I need help with something, I'm going to ask my 13-year-old because he knows way more than I do, which is dangerous in and of itself. So when we go back to thinking about what's going on with these generations, this is helpful information as we're navigating forward. Because knowing what your kids, what stage they are in, if you're a grandparent, okay, I'm talking to my Gen Xer or my millennial. If I'm a great-grandparent, this is what I'm talking to. If I'm in those generations, I understand where I'm at. And then we can kind of meet them somewhere in the middle to understand where they're coming from and their direction. The biggest example I can give you is about Bibles. That's a big point of contention in a lot of people. I want the word. I want it in my hand. I want to open it. I want to flip the pages, right? However, what do the young generation know? It's on their phones. And so we have to be careful not to shame them for it being on their phone. Because ultimately we're like, that's awesome. You're reading the Bible. That's number one. You're in the Word of God. But if we shame them and say, well, it's not the same. You need to open that Word of God. Then what are they going to do? Forget this. And they're going to walk away. So we have to be super careful and make sure that we're not putting shame into it and making sure that we are saying, hey, that's awesome that you're doing that, but just an FYI, sometimes in the digital format, they change some of the words or they may mislead that. So just make sure you're double checking it. If you're curious, just go back to the pages and make sure that, it's the same thing. Because it's true, it will change from digital to the written, but even the written word is changing depending on the version you get. They'll leave out stuff. So none of it's 100% unless we have the original version. We just have to be really careful, right? That's kind of where discernment and all that stuff comes in. All right, so we're going to build a house. All of this is about building our house. Our house is going to be together, and our house is going to be super safe, and it's going to be put together. So the first part of our house is going to deal with laying the foundation. This is on the assumption that everybody that's here has a relationship with God. That relationship with God, it's always there. You don't necessarily see it. You feel it. You know it's there. You know it's steady underneath of you. That's what your house has to be built on, right? That's why we sing solid rock, right? Because we don't want it built on sinking sand. We want it a firm foundation. After we've built that foundation, then we're building the walls and the frames of our house. Technically, in the building world, our frame is it's the load-bearing part of the house, right? Keeps everything secure from falling on top of us. Well, in this part of the house, I can't think from my brain. Scroll up so I can read that. You're fired. So our frame in this point is the being in the Word, okay? So we're going to make sure we're attending church. We're getting involved in a local church, small group, music, outreach, whatever you can plug yourself into. Janitorial staff, it doesn't really matter as long as you're getting involved in something. And part of that foundation as well is our health, physical and mental. And as we move forward in our weeks to come, we will be talking about physical and mental health for all of us. Because if we're not physically, mentally healthy, we can't be there for our kids as well. So all of this is kind of keeping those frames together. After we've done our frames, then we're moving to our roof. Our roof is prayer. We are literally covering our homes in prayer every day. There is a thing about prayer where some of us are a little bit confused and we're like, well, I don't really know how to pray. We will touch on that and we'll kind of delve into that as we get going. But right now, the simplest thing I can tell you is it's a conversation between you and God. It's nothing, we kind of make it out to be this big fancy thing, right? Where we're just like, okay, well, Father, our Father who art in heaven. Okay, it doesn't have to be. I can have a prayer by driving in my car to work and just having a conversation with him. That's really all it is. It's a conversation with me and my friend, with me and my Father. That's it. But we don't do it enough. We forget to have it, or we get into this trap of, well, I've got to have my devotion time every day at 5:30 in the morning. That's awesome. Please don't think I'm not saying that's not awesome. But there are times where, man, I'm just exhausted. I'm tired. I didn't get up. I got in the car really fast. That became my devotion time from my drive to work. Does that make sense? But we have to keep praying over our families. And I know people talk about the shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept. But really, it's pray continually. That's the one. And it's Paul talking to the Thessalonians. And he makes that very clear. And we should do that all the time and make that a habit for our families and the people in our household. All right, so after we've talked about the roof, then that's our home. So as we're going through our home, our house, we know that our house has the windows, bedrooms, doors, blah, blah, blah. And that's all there. Our front door and windows become important because it lets things in, but we can also keep things out. And so when we go into the house, we want to be careful because your house is supposed to be your safety net. That's where chaos is not supposed to happen, right? It's supposed to be a place of refuge. And sometimes the world gets into our house. And right now, how is the world getting into our house? The internet. It's coming in through digital. And so that's what we have to be careful for. And that's where we need to find those ways to navigate around that and figure out how to touch on that. So as we go through the house, what's after that? Go, one more. Our security. This is our village, our security system. This is the one that I hope this is where we're tagging into, is our village. Because we have lost our village. It used to be, and I've said this before to other people, we used to go to church and anybody could get your kid in trouble. And we would know, is Miss So-and-so on the second row? If she sees me messing up, she's going to turn around. We just knew. And now we're like, oh, I can't say anything to that kid. They're going to be in trouble. We've got to get back to that. But more importantly, we've got to get back to our village of people. So I always call it our wise counsel. Casey and I talk about it as our wise counsel. We have our people around us that are people we go to when we have financial questions, are not the same people I'm going to go to if I have kid questions, are not the same people I'm going to go to if I have a question about theology, are not the same people. Does that make sense? But that's my wise counsel, and they're not a big group. It's like 2 or 3 people that are close, and that's going to change seasonally. It's going to change if I move cities. But it takes a while to get those people, and it takes a while to get your village, and they're not necessarily family. It's just your village of people that you trust pretty much with everything, but more importantly, that they're there for you and your children spiritually. and that they're willing to take the step and say, hey, I noticed or I saw, and they're going to step in. And it hurts and it doesn't always feel good, but they're willing to say, I noticed your kid, man, he doesn't really talk to you, or he's kind of disrespectful to you. How can I help you? That's what we're looking for, because we're just kind of leaving each other out there to deal with it, not realizing that in this generation of parents, myself included, we are super embarrassed. And we see social media, and we see pictures, and we see Facebook pages that everybody has this perfect family. And we didn't see all the stuff that it took to make that one photo that looked really, really good. But we're not honing in to what's really going on. And I know we talk a lot about life groups and small groups, and that's all great, but there are those of us who really don't even want to share in those groups. But we will share with our village, because that village is our tight group that's really not going to judge us. And I'll speak for myself. We've been through a lot with our boys. We've lost friends because of our boys, because of their mental health issues. And these were church people. And so I think sometimes in the church world, we are our own worst enemies. We're really good about just slicing each other right at the knees. And that's churches across America. That's not just, we're just put it out on the table here. And so we have to be careful, because the world's watching us. And if they see it in us and they're like, well, I just saw what happened over there, why do they need to come? What makes it so different from you and I? And as a parent, when you're seeing your kids and you're hearing them talk in the car, I'm the best eavesdropper, because they'll be talking to each other, and they don't think I'm listening. I'm listening to every word they're saying, every innuendo they're given, and I'm constantly I'm butting in. What was that? What were you saying? And they're getting in trouble for stuff. But you have to be. And as a grandparent, if your house says, as for me and my house, that is your house. And if the rules in your house, if your grandkids come to your house and you're like, I don't want you on your cell phone. You're coming to visit me. You're coming to spend time with me. At some point, you're going to have to draw that line in the sand that says, I love you, my son, my daughter, but I want my grandkids. And if they can't come to me untethered, and that worries you that they're not going to come untethered, then I need to come to you, because they can't come into my house tethered. And that's a really hard pill to swallow for some of us, because we're afraid that our own kids will be like, oh, well, then fine, I guess they're not going to see grandma and grandpa. But we have to, because unless you're willing to sit side by side with that kid and what they're watching, and it is so slick right now, Disney's the worst, but letting them watch anything, Cartoon Network, anything, it'll be very subtle, and it'll just be put in there, and it's, same-sex couple. And it's that fast. And you just go, wait, what was that? But if you're not sitting there and you didn't catch it, but then are you ready to have that conversation? Because you'll have to talk about it, because they just saw it. And so all of that stuff is stuff that I'm going to start talking about next time, our next meeting. I'm going to delve into technology. I do post on Facebook if something comes through that's like, hey, watch out for this app or watch out for that. There's some good websites out there. Like, I will purposefully go on, it's a Christian movie thing where I scan the movies first before I take my kids to see them, so we're not caught off guard. We purposefully didn't go see the new Toy Story, even though my kids were completely looking forward to it. But when that came out, and it was like there was going to be some stuff that I was not wanting them to be dealing with, we didn't see it. And it was hard, because they were not happy, because they were waiting for it. And I said, I'm sorry, we're not doing it. We will not do that in this house. And so you just have to figure out where you're going to draw the line, where you're willing to draw your battle lines. So with that being said, between now and the next time, which is like September, and I have that at the end, but I want you to do the following things for me. I want you to monitor the members of your family's technology usage. You don't have to write it down, but I want you to kind of keep track from now till then. Just kind of keep track. How much are you on your phone? How much is your husband on your phone? How much are your grandkids on your phone? Anybody that's in and out of your house, how much are they on your phone? And that means making a phone call, scrolling through Facebook, whatever it is that you do on your phone. How much time do you think you're putting in on your phone? If you're at work and you're already on a computer, that counts. It's still technology because it's still the blue light, right? So it still counts. Trust me on this one. So just kind of keep track of that. And I want you to also notice what time of the day it is. So like if you notice that, I'm not on it during the day, but man, at night, at 9 o'clock at night, I'm scrolling through Facebook. Just kind of store that in the back of your brain so that because we're going to use that next time. Then, was there something else? No, that was it. So those main things, I want you to think about that and keep that in your brain because next time we're going to really hit that hard. Like I said, I cannot word vomit everything to you because if I do, it will not only scare you, but it will overwhelm you. So I want to be careful and piece this together. But next week is our technology room of our house, which we'll go through that. I can give you a heads up if you're in Van, and I believe Canton, they do use Chromebooks. And those are used a lot. It's basically where all the teaching comes from. You do have the right, grandparent, parent, to ask what their, what's the word I'm looking for, software, their guarding software is. In Van, it's, what is it called? ClassWise. And this year, Van blocked YouTube altogether. So it's totally blocked this year because kids were getting on YouTube and there is a way to check for if they're on a split screen. These kids are quick. I don't know if you figured out the incognito screen. Okay, well, it looks like if you're hovering over them and it looks like they're on the computer doing what you think they're doing, but they have what's called an incognito window, which is one you can't see. And it quickly goes away when somebody walks up.
Do they make it go away?
It's like the stroke of a key. It's like, poof, done. And it's gone. And you won't even see it. But they know it's there. They know it's there. And so you have to be very, very careful. In the schools, my own oldest kid got through a firewall in elementary, like 4th or 5th grade, and ended up, I'm not going to lie, ended up on a porn site. And the principal was like, how did he even do that? And we're like, I have no idea. No clue. And so in YouTube Shorts, if your kids watch any of those, it's basically like TikTok, but it's on YouTube. And that is actually taking over TikTok. So once my generation gets on something that they really like Facebook, then all the kids go, oof, that's not cool anymore. And they move to the next thing. So it was TikTok. Well, then TikTok, all of a sudden, my generation's getting onto and watching, and they're like, oh, nope. So now they're moving to YouTube Shorts. Well, YouTube Shorts is not restricted. And I mention this next time, and I will go in detail about it. But I will just say if your kid's using it, stop them from using it. Because it's way more wicked than TikTok. There are no restrictions on YouTube Shorts. They can go from seeing something completely normal to something completely inappropriate within seconds. And so it's just, wow, it's out there. So as far as YouTube, if you've got little kids, YouTube Kids is better because there are a little bit more ways that you can block things on that. But YouTube Shorts is the worst. As far as TikTok goes, if you haven't used TikTok, I would use TikTok. I use TikTok. That's where I get my information from. I don't even watch the news anymore, to be honest, because I will get more real news from TikTok than I will from watching the news. Oh, I could go down a big rabbit trail on that one. Anything you're hearing on the news, not anything, but a lot of the things you're hearing on the news are not the truth. But when you're watching TikTok, that's the one system that the government keeps trying to shut down. It's getting all your personal information. It's stealing your soul. Well, why is that? Because it's real. For now, anyways. For now. And there's some stuff you have to be careful because I usually read the comments. The comments will tell me if it's like old news or if that's just a hoax. Because someone will say, I'm in Seattle. That's not happening right now. But then you'll see other things that are like absolute truth. I, for a while, had to, because, okay, I don't know if you know how algorithms work. So if you go home and try this, algorithms, all of those things have an algorithm. So when you spend seconds on something, it kicks onto that algorithm. So suddenly it'll spit out more of that information to you. So if you sit on one thing that's inappropriate, suddenly you're getting more stuff that's inappropriate. If you're a kid and you're sitting on something that's like hate speech, the rest of the videos you're getting are hate speech. And so it's propaganda for them that they're starting to believe and they're starting to buy. And they're like, oh, well, did you know, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, that's not true. That's not true. But they're getting that because they're like, this is truth. This is what it's saying. So you have to be super careful with it. But as an adult that can monitor that, when China was locking down and they were like, they're chaining us in and the government was saying, no, we're not doing that. They were the ones posting the videos going, I'm standing in my room, look what's happening. And all the Chinese officials were locking the doors. Now with AI, some of that's going to change because they can implement stuff that looks really real, sounds really real, totally not real. So all of that stuff is stuff we have to look forward to. But for now, monitor your time and see what you're using, how much time you're using, your kids using. Ask them when they get home from school, how many class periods a day were you on your computer? And they'll tell you, I was in them for 5 hours. Okay, 5 class periods. They're on those devices all the time, and they're not always doing their work. I know because I monitor, I'm a teacher in the district, so I can actually monitor my kids. They're up on mine. One day, Michael came into my room when he was at my campus, and he goes, I don't like you today, because I kept clicking him out of windows. And I said, well, too bad. Because I had that advantage to click him out of the windows. And they're playing games. They're doing, if I were a kid on a computer, I guarantee I'd be doing the same thing. It's in my face. I don't want to listen to social studies or math. I want to play games. So we're putting it in their face going, hey, use this. But it's basically like Adam and Eve. Here's the tree, don't touch it. But here it is. And we're doing that to kids. And they're not old enough to really know really what's good or bad for them. So this WOW stuff is not just for Crossroads. It really is community. I want it to grow for community. I want it to be for everybody to get the information. Because I'm in the education system, there's some stuff I'm going to know that you don't know, that I can feed you. That's not to trick you, but that's to let you know what's happening within the education system. That's to just kind of be honest with you, because the education system only shows you what they want you to see. And that's just the truth. It's kind of like with STAR testing. Exactly. It's fine. But so if you have questions or you know somebody that has questions, anything about education, I can help you with that. We also have some other people that work in the education system that can help you. But anybody in public education right now, they need all the help they can get. If your kids are in the public education system, don't be afraid to be that bullying mom that just stays on top of them. Don't be afraid to be the bullying grandmother that stays on top of them. What's my kid doing? What are they talking about? What are the conversations? I just found out the other day from a random conversation in the car talking about cell phones at school where my oldest told me at the junior high, he said, well, the hardest part about cell phones, because my kids don't have cell phones. And I said, oh, what? And he said that the kids will ask to go to the bathroom. They're not going to the bathroom. They're going on their phones, which I knew. However, I didn't know that they were going into the stalls on their phones. He said, I have to wait forever to try to use the bathroom because they're on the stalls. Well, it's because they're trying to stay one step ahead of the teachers. The teachers scan the bathrooms. They were getting the kids that are standing out there. So what are they doing now? Now they're going in the stalls and get on their phones. And who knows what pictures and stuff that they're doing on their phones and all that kind of stuff. So my kids do not have cell phones, and they're 13 and 14, and they will not have cell phones. I tease them when they drive, they'll get a jitterbug. So, like, here's what you get. I'm not kidding. Because it's just, even the people that have made cell phones, the people that have made TikTok, that have made Facebook, have come out and said it was the worst thing they ever did. They regret it. They had no idea where this was going to go. And so, and these are people that aren't even Christians. They don't even have a relationship with God, and they see that it's bad. So it's up to us to guide our children. It's up to us to guide our grandchildren and to be those advocates for them, therefore being the warriors. It's not going to be easy. We're going to get a lot of kickback from our kids. We are the ones they're going to really not like, but it is not my job to be their friend. And if the clock is ticking and I don't have time to play anymore. And that goes for my kids and that goes for anybody else. I don't have time to play anymore. I used to be the nice one on Facebook that was like, I don't want to get into it with people, and I don't want to put anything that's going to upset everybody. And now I'm like, I do not care. I do not care. It's like, I don't have time to play with you because I do not want to stand before God and him go, remember that girl, the girl that you didn't want to offend? She's not here.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to answer for that. And I know that's not the way it works, but in my head, that's the conversations I have with myself. They're like, I don't want to stand before him and have to say, you're right. I didn't take that opportunity. So, questions? That was a lot.
Did Casey video this?
Yes, he made a video of it.
Is that going to be available? Because I really wanted my son and daughter-in-law to come tonight, but they couldn't. But they said they'd like to come in the future.
Yeah, we could make that available. Since we're just starting off, we might probably set up a Facebook page or something where we can post those things. Yep.